Today's a big day. Volunteer gets brought out into the sunshine. Trish's brother Paul came along to add a bit of muscle to the process. First, we took down the front wall of the garage, which had been designed for just this purpose, all screwed and bolted together. I'd removed our front steps the day before. We tied a chain block to the tow bar of my ute and started to pull it out of the shed. The cradle is on industrial skates. It had to be done in sections as long as the fall of the chain, resetting the chain at full length when it got short. We started about 8 a.m. and had hauled it almost to the footpath by 2:30 p.m. It wasn't quite out of the shed, but we knocked off for a cold beer. Next day, a few more friends and family turned up and we shifted the skates to go under the lead keel and the deadwood cradles and moved them out onto the driveway. We then attached the chain block to the lead, put the skates back under the boat cradle and pulled the boat further out so that it would be in reach of the Franna crane we'd engaged. The crane's first job was to lift the lead and the deadwood onto the smaller truck of the two we'd hired from our mates at Botany Access. With the cradle strapped firmly to the boat, the crane picked it all up with straps on a spreader bar, lifted it high and the truck was driven under. Then we manhandled the mast out of the shed to a position where the crane could pick it up, and I lashed it on deck. trucks then set off for Noakes Boatyard in North Sydney. Botany Access driver Nick did a great job in getting the boat down the tight entrance to Noakes. Noakes staff lifted the boat and cradle off the truck with the travel lift. Meanwhile, back at home, our son Jordan and his mate had put the front of the shed back on and rebuilt the front steps. Next day, they stood volunteer high enough so I could roll the deadwood underneath. I jacked the deadwood up underneath in its exact position, then drilled through the pre-drilled holes in the plank keel at least 4 inches into the top of the deadwood. Then I lowered the deadwood and moved it away to a point where I could continue drilling the long 5/8 of an inch and ½ inch holes right through the deadwood. Fellow boatbuilder Rob Gordon gave me a hand for a few days to drill and fit the deadwood. Rob's building his own 28-foot Carvel Planking Ep28 boat about 1 kilometre from here. We only got the long augers stuck in the spotted gum a couple of times, but freed them up with soapy water. We then spread thick blackjack, roofing asphalt, on top of the deadwood and bolted it up. Rob also fine-tuned the spotted gum wedge that fills the gap at the forward end where the keel starts to bend up. We drilled the holes for the 5/8 inch bolts at 16 millimetres, the holes for the ½ inch bolts at 13 millimetres, both just a fraction over size. Copper bolts through spotted gum will inevitably jam in the holes if you drill them at the exact same size. These ones were driven through easily with a heavy maul using lanolin grease as a lubricant. The next step was to roll the lead ballast under the hull and jack it into position. The upholstery my Mel Godfrey turned up at this point, so I gave it a trial fit and took a photo, then stowed it forward out of the way and covered it with plastic sheeting. The 3/4 inch keel bolt holes were pre-drilled through the plank keel, so I drilled down through these about 4 inches into the lead for each of the 8 holes. One drill died in the service. I lowered the lead and rolled it aside and jacked it on a bit of an angle so the drill would clear the hull, and continued drilling the holes right through the lead. With the aid of lanolin grease as a lubricant, this took around 20 to 30 minutes per hole. I jacked the lead up again, making sure I engaged a couple of the bolts, then drove all of the bolts from inside. I had counterbored for the washers and nuts underneath the lead with this great tool borrowed from fellow shipwright Peter Gossel for a couple of the bolts I could get access to, then drill the others once the lead was in position. I bedded the lead with a sheet of malthoid, which is asphalt impregnated roofing felt, the closest thing to shipwrights felt I could get, with plenty of blackjack on top against the deadwood. Another shipwright, Mitch Spooner, helped me tighten the bolts, which meant plenty of blackjack squeezed out. Mitch also helped me fit the rudder on its 3 bronze gudgeons, plus getting the shaft back in and the stuffing box packed. Yanmar expert Alan Clark got the motor running about this time too. Noakes Boatyard is in Berries Bay and is the home of the Rangers. 3 of them are moored in the bay. And another, Kilkie, turned up with shipwright Rick Wood just after the lead was bolted on for a bit of work. I spent several days fairing up the deadwood with a power plane and fairing in the garboard plank, mostly with a curved sole backing out plane. Then I fitted plugs to all the fastening heads in the garboard. Shipwright Marcus Cranny, who built his own Ranger up near Murwillumbah 6 or 7 years ago, arrived to help for the last few days and made a neat fairing block for the forward end of the ballast and deadwood, along with too many other jobs to mention. We primed the deadwood and the lead with multiple coats of Primacon. I prepared to step the mast with hew and pine wedges ready to go and a 1950 penny, my birth year, ready to go under the mast. The mast went in on the Thursday before the Sunday launch date, and Noakes staff did a very professional job. The standing rigging was by the legend Joe Henderson in Dyneema. There'll be a separate video soon about the use of Dyneema rigging on a traditional boat. Look out for it. On the Friday, Noakes staff moved Volunteer to a position closer to the travel lift pen. By the way, that's not the waterline in blue tape there. That guy can't tape waterlines for shit. It's a raised tape line to stop rainwater running down onto the wet primer on the bottom, and it worked well through several rain showers. In its new position, Marcus applied 2 coats of Seahawk teal anti-fouling paint on the Saturday. Our next episode will be about the launching of Volunteer, and there'll be a couple more videos on fitting deck gear and on rigging. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to have a squiz at the previous episodes on Smithy's Boatshed channel, and check out my books on www.sydneywoodenboatschool.com.au.